Greetings, ladies. Hello, Tara.
Hi,
How you doing there?
good. I'm in my office working.
So diligent. I love this. Simone, welcome. Greetings, my darling. Greetings from New York. Do you want to say a quick hello? Maybe not. Just like this looks like it's just you and I, Tara. I love this. Leo love, Leo
Oh,
magic.
hi.
Hello, Simone. Hello.
Hello.
How you doing? How's your day been?
I'm good. Good.
Excellent. Well, today, ladies, we're
Mhm.
going to be talking about oral health and fertility. I will get you to just mute yourselves until I finish the presentation, which hopefully will only be 30 minutes. But today we're going to be talking about the connection between oral health and your fertility. I think this, as a doctor of Chinese medicine for 24 years, I believe this is one of the most overlooked problems in conventional medicine and integrative medicine. So if you think about it, did you know that 80% of disease symptoms are related to problems in the mouth? I thought that statistic was a little bit overwhelming. So today I'm going to be talking a lot about the health of your mouth and how it can significantly impact your fertility. We're going to look at gum infections, oral bacteria imbalances and inflammation, how it really affects ovulation, implantation, pregnancy outcomes, and clearly what you can do to optimize your oral microbiome for conception. So if we just look at, the cavities and how it relates to your microbiome, I think most people are under the impression that, certain harmful bacteria causes the cavities, but it's now understood that the causes of tooth decay and cavities and gum disease, such as gingivitis, and they're actually attributed to imbalance in the oral microbiome rather than the presence of the bacteria itself. So I think in other words, certain pathogenic bacteria won't cause problems for someone who has an overall healthy microbiome. However, they can trigger disease in others who lack enough healthy bacteria to counteract the pathogen's effects. So when we're looking at the microbiome, we see this shift that it's mostly composed of aerobic bacteria, but when we start to get these infections, it's that shift to more anaerobic bacteria. Now this is your Streptococcus mutans, your Porphyromonas gingivala, and that creates a hypertrophic film. Isn't that interesting? Inside the mouth. And this makes tooth erosion and gum disease more likely to develop. So in a study that I looked at, this was with the famous Professor Roger Hart. He's actually an Australian professor at the University of Western Australia. He's also the medical director of the fertility specialists in Western Australia. He published in the Journal of Human Reproduction in May 2012 that, the findings in his research on periodontal gum disease on women's time to conceive, the findings indicated that women with gum disease took an average of 2 months longer to conceive than women without gum disease. So he said, Professor Hart, he said that the effect of gum disease on conception is about the same order of magnitude, and I'm saying that magnitude, as the effect of obesity. And if you look at the obesity crisis worldwide, it's huge. So you can see how this is getting really overlooked. So if we think of our mouths, it's literally full of bacteria. And then this bacteria sticks to the mucus and the bits of food, and then it forms that sticky plaque on the teeth. And if you leave it too long before you're removing the plaque and the tartar, the bacteria causes inflammation, and it's called gingivitis. This is where the gums appear red and swollen and bleed. And then if that's not attended to, right, it's like then we get into the periodontitis. This literally means it's anything itis. It literally means inflammation around the tooth. Okay, so with periodontitis, the gums pull away from the teeth and the little pockets start to develop and they become infected. And this is where the bacteria and plaque starts to grow below the gum line. And that's where the immune system starts to respond, okay? And then the toxins from that bacteria, that's where it leaches into the immune system. And then we've got a whole cascade taking place, and that's where the teeth become loose. And, Professor Hart, he says about 1 in 10 people is thought to have severe periodontal disease. So I'll let you sit with that for a moment. It's pretty scary, isn't it? So if we look at the mouth-body connection, so these destructive agents, right, get into the bloodstream, and then it can explain why gum disease is linked to an increased risks of a number of chronic diseases. So we've got type 2 diabetes, we've got insulin resistance, we've got heart disease, respiratory disease, and kidney disease. But we're all here because I'm focusing on this fertility perspective. But if we look at poor oral health, is associated with high risks of miscarriage. We've got preterm birth, preeclampsia, like lots of ovulation issues. And this is, irregular ovulation, anovulation. That means not ovulating at all. And that then creates an inflammatory response. It can disrupt, the hormonal balance. It can make things like PCOS worse, and then creates insulin resistance, leading to more ovulatory dysfunction. We can get caught in this mousetrap here. We've also got delayed conception, gestational diabetes. What else? We've got increased inflammatory markers. This is, if you're looking at your serum blood test, your CRP markers. So that's always the marker that you could look for. We'll get into the markers later, but, if we're looking at male fertility, we've got reduced sperm quality, we've got higher DNA fragmentation, erectile dysfunction. So the gum disease is linked to a reduced nitric oxide, which affects blood flow and erectile function. We've also got, with IVF, we've got lower embryo implantation rates and then increased risk of IVF failure. So there's a plethora of things and a cascade of things that happens just by looking at our oral health. So what are the signs? These are the things I want you to be able to be your own little fertility detective, because that's why we're here, is to learn with this awareness so you can really start to investigate. But it's looking at the increased plaque on the teeth that's thick, that's sticky. It could be smelly and it's off-white. All right, sometimes you can even pick it off your teeth and it's like a shard, and it can form a film on the teeth in the morning. All right, you may have bad breath, morning breath, but it's lingering, bleeding gums or receding gums. You may even have sensitive teeth, okay? Look for that. Mouth ulcers, particularly recurrent mouth ulcers. So if you're starting to feel like, where are these coming from? You're right, this could be your oral health. Okay, so you could have oral thrush, oral candidiasis, which is a fungal infection, Candida albicans. It overgrows. It's in the mouth, so you can get it in the mouth, not just in the vagina. All right, but the periodontitis that we talked about that previously. All right, that's your gum disease. But you've got lots of tooth cavities, so you could be just getting tooth decay. Endodontic infections, so root canals, these could be showing up. You could have a dry socket. I actually used to be a dental nurse in a past life. That's a whole other story, but I'm going to deviate there. But clearly I didn't end up as a dental nurse. It was just a sidetrack when I was working at what I wanted to do in life. But I remember this guy almost died on the table with a dry socket, and it freaked me out. I was really freaked out with that. It was like I was only 19 years old. It was pretty scary before I studying Chinese medicine. But you could have, tonsillitis. All right, so it could be recurrent tonsillitis, respiratory infections, and recurrent URTIs. You could have heart disease, stroke, certain types of cancer, chronic dry mouth. Now, this is all linked to the gut and the microbiome imbalances. But persistent gum infections or a history of root canals. So let's look at some strategies, because I'm going to jump into a lot of strategies, what we can do, because we can always make changes and simple changes. And I think part of it is it all has to start with us. So we want to avoid products and, such as detergent-based toothpaste and alcohol-containing antiseptic, mouthwashes, including those that are made with sodium lauryl sulfate, SLS. I think that's the number one. But fluoride, sodium fluoride. We've also got triclosan. Now, this is a wide-spectrum antibacterial. You'll see it often in soaps, but it's an antibacterial and antifungal that breaks down to a dioxin. Now, dioxin, it's a carcinogen. and an endocrine disruptors. We talked about endocrine disruptors last week. So, with endocrine disruptors, it creates a whole hormonal cascade of problems. So it can alter, just testosterone, thyroid serum levels. But progesterone, estrogen, it can create allergies and cancer. So look for the triclosan and artificial sweeteners such as, sodium saccharin, aspartame, xylitol, artificial color dyes. So this is where, ladies, we've got to be looking at our products. It's often made from coal tar, artificial color dyes. Propylene glycol. We've also got ditholamine. It's a DEA. And then we've got microbeads. These are the tiny little solid plastic particles. All right. These are the things I want you to look for. All right. But we want to, if we can think about what we can do, like starting off, one of the first things I often will start with oral health care is look at a probiotic. Okay. So if you've got some of these symptoms, all right, and you've looked at your toothpaste and think that we wanted to start with a probiotic straight away. That's the first thing we're going to start with, because it's literally going to help populate the mouth with the friendly bacteria. It's going to work in the same way as it does with our gut health, and we need that for our fertility. It's going to help reduce inflammation and blocking the bad bacteria from reaching the enamel and the vulnerable tissues. So it's going to help alter that pH of the mouth. So if you're looking at a probiotic, we want to get a really good broad spectrum, high strain count. So we call this CFUs, colony forming units. We want about 30 to 40 billion colony forming units. So try taking it in the morning before eating. You can take it with or without food. But, if you do have some of these symptoms, you might be wanting to do it like twice a day. You can do it even once, before each meal. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner, before meals, prior to eating. Okay. But then look at the diet. All right. Because these are the things we can control. So we want a nutrient dense diet. And when I mean that, it's like we want to take, think of what's on your plate. We want diversity, lots of diversity. So some of the foods that help because we want the beneficial bacteria. Remember, there's good bacteria and bad bacteria. We want the beneficial bacteria to thrive. Okay, so foods that emphasize that, all right, and that are alkalizing and anti-inflammatory and high antioxidant foods. So these are foods that we should be eating regularly, and this includes like all your green leafy greens, vegetables, your silica-rich foods. So they are things like cucumbers, celery, carrots. Okay, antioxidant berries, all berries, citrus fruits and other fruits, they're high in antioxidants. Your cruciferous vegetables, okay, they are your broccoli. This is your brassica family: broccoli, cauliflower, kale, bok choy, all right, Brussels sprouts, plus all any fresh vegetables, right? Any fresh vegetables. They're just the diversity of veggies. And then if we look at herbs, so turmeric, basil, rosemary, ginger, oregano, thyme. We want to look at, lots of protein, but organically raised meat, poultry, eggs, ethically sourced fish, wild caught rather than farm raised. We want to look at your healthy fats. So this is all your avocado, your nuts and seeds. And, we're taking a probiotic, yes, but then we want to look at probiotic and fermented foods. So, food is always number one. So we want to supplement with foods like yogurt and kefir and kombucha or sauerkraut or even dill pickles, beet kvass, all these awesome things. And then prebiotic foods. So this includes your onions and your leeks and your artichokes and your dandelion greens and garlic. What else? Chicory, asparagus, apples and flax seeds. So, use your prebiotic foods and your probiotic foods that are rich. So this will give you that nice balance. Plenty of water, ladies. All right. Here we go. Glass is the new plastic. We learned that from last week. A little bit of a refresher there. And then bone broth. We all, everyone hears me talk about bone broth. It is the fertility elixir of life, but it's great for the oral microbiome. So it's, bone broth, collagen protein, organ meats. This is what we need. Lots of this. So that rich, dense food is really going to be important for your oral microbiome. The main things to avoid with foods, it's processed, it's high carb foods, sugar foods, all right, seed oils, commercial animal products, fried foods, deep fried, sugary drinks and diet drinks. I mean, that's pretty simple. And we're taking all of this out anyway with our fertility. If we're doing our preconception planning, we're already taking this out. So you already know this, ladies, but it's nice to go over this. Now, I know exercise, it may not seem obvious, but there's an association between a lack of exercise, chronic stress, and poor oral health. So, unhealthy lifestyle and lots of stress can lead to a decrease in saliva, which affects the types of microbes that populate the mouth. So we want to think about, dry mouth, loss of appetite. You may have TMG, teeth grinding, all right, all of these things, all right, they're going to make the environment in the mouth more acidic. So we want to manage stress too. And now this is like exercise is a form of managing stress and keeping inflammation under control. But other mind-body practices, so it can be meditation, lower diaphragmatic breathing. I teach breathing practices with all of my fertility patients. You all know this, ladies. But, in its simplicity, if you're not used to, breathing techniques, place one hand on your heart, one hand on your womb space, and just feel that bottom hand rise and fall with the breath. Feel the belly expand with the inhale. Let the belly just, excavate to the spine on the out breath. So it's the rise and fall of the belly, and especially if you're horizontal, using gravity, you can do that lower diaphragmatic breathing, but it just helps decrease the stress-induced inflammatory fight or flight response that leads to that compromised immune system. So you see, this is also, it's also good for the lymphatic system, because when we do this, we're working on circulation, detoxification, switching on that parasympathetic nervous system, which helps keep your teeth and your gums and your tissues in your mouth in good shape. All right, I'm going to just do a little bit of a deviation because I just want to bring some fun and, frivolity into the talk because it's serious and it gets heavy. All right, but I'm going to talk about Alice in Wonderland. Remember, the Mad Hatter? All right, so Mercury, the Mad Hatter, and your fertility, we're just going to have a little talk about tumbling down the rabbit hole. So we're going to take a step back in time to that childhood story, Alice in Wonderland by Lewis Carroll, published in 1865. And everyone remembers the Mad Hatter's Tea Party. I even had a Mad Hatter's Tea Party for my godchild. And for her 5th birthday, we had a Mad Hatter's Tea Party, and Bert dressed up as the Mad Hatter. And my little godchild was Alice in Wonderland, and she stepped through. Anyway, I'm sidetracking here, but I'm just trying to bring lightness to this story because the Mad Hatter, the term actually comes from a real life phenomenon, right? And this is the hat makers. They were suffering from mercury poisoning in the 18th and 19th century. And our hatters used to use mercury nitrate to treat the felt. And then that led to exposure of neurological, the constant exposure of the mercury led to the neurological damage, causing tremors and mood swings and memory loss and even hallucinations. Essentially, they were going mad. All right. So the condition became known as the Mad Hatter's disease. So what if I told you for some reason that mercury exposure from dental fillings, all right, stay with me. I'm getting to the conclusion of the story, but can create that same kind of internal chaos. All right. So remember those neurological effects, tremors, mood swings, memory loss, cognitive decline. All right. Mirror what we now recognize as symptoms of mercury toxicity. So here's where I'm going to connect the dots to your fertility. Mercury disrupts hormonal balance. So just like it affected the nervous system of the hat makers, it interferes with estrogen and progesterone and your thyroid hormones and your insulin. So it makes conception more difficult. Okay, mercury impacts the sperm and the egg quality. It's a reproductive toxin, and that increases oxidative stress. It damages the eggs, it damages the sperm, it damages the embryos. Mercury affects implantation and pregnancy outcomes. So studies link mercury exposure to a higher risk of miscarriage, preterm birth, and development issues. We've talked about that above. Mercury destabilizes the gut and the immune system. So it creates inflammation. It creates autoimmune reactions. It creates gut dysbiosis, and that further disrupts fertility. So much like Alice tumbling down the rabbit hole, many couples that are struggling to conceive, and you may have unexplained infertility, may unknowingly be dealing with mercury toxicity from old dental fillings. So it's a hidden factor that's been dismissed for decades. So that's why I really wanted to do this talk today, all right? So the good news, unlike the Mad Hatter, we have biological dentistry. We have, I'm going to look at some strategies, detoxification strategies. We've got safer alternatives to help remove mercury and restore that hormonal balance. So the first thing is I want you to, do you have amalgam fillings in your mouth? All right. So you want to take control of your oral health straight away. That could be one of the interventions that you start to look at. And, this mercury could be literally silently pulling you down the rabbit hole. So if you've been struggling, I think it's time that, you do explore your dental health history and take some steps to approach your oral health and maybe do it from a holistic point of view. So this is where I want you to approach your oral health holistically, find a biological dentist. So I want you to look at this site. It's called the International Academy of Oral Medicine and Toxicology. It's IAOMT.org, the International Academy of Oral Medicine and Toxicology. So on their website, and I love their website, they've got Find a Dentist, they've got fluoride facts, they've got mercury facts, and they've also got a SMART program. So it's a safe mercury amalgam removal technique known as the SMART program, and it's designed to protect patients and dental staff from mercury releases during amalgam filling removal. So you want to ask your dentist, are you a biological dentist? Do you have an IAOMT accreditation? I think that's the takeaway from today. Do you have IAOMT accreditation? Ask your dentist. What's your removal protocol? What are your infection control practices? Like you need to advocate for yourself, ladies. You want to, what's the mercury removal follow-up plan? What's your stance on fluoride? What's your stance on mercury? How many patients do you see in a day? So, ask your dentist, because you might need to change dentists, or go on the site and find someone in your local area. All right, find a holistic dentist. So if we look at some of the best ways to detect hidden infections and bacterial imbalances, so you can do salivary microbiome testing. It identifies pathogenic bacteria, yeast overgrowth, and inflammatory markers. You can do oral pH testing, because an acidic mouth, that means low pH. If you've got an acidic mouth, it's going to promote that bacterial overgrowth and enamel erosion. I mentioned the CRP blood test. So this is your blood serum, so CRP levels. So that measures systemic inflammation, and those elevated levels are linked to gum disease. So we want it, in those low digits between 1 and 3, ideally, below 5, ideally. But 1 to 3. Have an exam. You want a, periodontal exam. And then we can look at, alternative diagnostics to x-rays. I'm not saying, sometimes you might need an x-ray, but where possible, you can try and avoid them, especially, if you are ovulating, or, if you're in that luteal phase, or there is a chance that you could be pregnant. We want to look at alternative diagnostics. All right, so we can look at laser fluorescence. This uses light energy to detect bacteria and early signs of decay in the gums and teeth without radiation. It can help identify hidden infections before they become major issues. We've got the salivary microbiome testing, all right, and that will just, those tests also check inflammatory markers. There's infrared imaging. So this detects inflammation and circulation changes in the gums and the jaw. This can be used instead of x-rays to assess hidden infections in the mouth. We've also, you could ask your dentist, do you do ozone gas or ozone therapy scans? Now, this ozone therapy is used to kill harmful bacteria in the gums. So some biological dentists, they use ozone assessments to find deep bacterial pockets. What else? There's laser-assisted new approachment. It's called a LANAP, capital LANAP. So this is laser therapy for treating gum disease instead of surgery. It's less painful. Clearly, it encourages new tissue growth. We've also got low-level laser therapy. So this reduces inflammation, pain, bacterial overgrowth in the gums. You could look at that. Now, why it matters for fertility, avoiding the x-rays where you can. If you are trying to conceive, we want to minimize radiation exposure. That's ideal. And like I said, especially if we know you've ovulated. So if you are doing x-rays, you want to do it just after your period in that early follicular phase, all right? Yeah, and we just want to minimize toxin exposure. So the laser treatments, they avoid the use of antibiotics and harsh mouthwashes and unnecessary chemicals. So, it's a win-win. Now, what can you do at home? So I want to look at some natural remedies that you can do to eliminate infections and restore balance in your mouth. So some oil pulling. So you can use coconut oil or sesame oil. It helps kill, harmful bacteria while preserving beneficial ones. So this is swishing the coconut oil. All right, it's quite exhausting because you've got to do it for about 20 minutes. It's quite exhausting. And remember, don't just swish it down the sink, because then it's like it blocks all the drains. So put it in the bin when you don't just throw it down the sink if you're doing your oil pulling. You can use things like phosphorus. This is a homeopathic. You can do 2 to 3 pellets under the tongue if you've got bleeding gums. All right, and gums tend to improve between 3 to 5 days, and we'll stop taking it. But that's a natural remedy. You can even make your own, herbal mouth rinses, using essential oils. So you look, there's so many essential oil blends that are great for the mouth that you can put inside your mouth. Geranium, lavender, tea tree, peppermint, clove, cinnamon, eucalyptus, geranium. All right, like all of these things, but we can make our own rinses. So some of them are, like a mouthwash rinse. So you can have 10 to 20 drops. You can choose which ones you want. And then filtered water, okay, swish in the mouth. And there's your natural mouthwash rinse. We can even make our own toothpaste. We can remineralize and make our own DIY at home mineral toothpaste. So 1/3 of a cup of bentonite clay, 1/4 of a cup of hot filtered water, a teaspoon of stevia, 1/4 of a teaspoon of pink Himalayan rock salt, tablespoon of coconut oil, and then use some of the essential oils. All right, so you can make your own toothpaste. Now, you can also use activated charcoal toothpaste. There's all of these fluoride-free toothpastes on the market now, like they're everywhere in supermarkets. So, do what you can. Start to change those simple things. You could use a tongue scraper. In Ayurveda, they use that. It helps reduce that bacterial load. I think it's called Amma. Tara can confirm that. She's a tooth scraping expert and an Ayurveda student, so we can ask her about that. But things like even natural binders for mercury detox. So, look at chlorella, look at cilantro, all right, coriander, but even infrared saunas, dry brushing. All right, we did a talk on lymphatic drainage. But I think the key takeaway is that we want to have regular checkups. We want to address the mercury fillings, the amalgam fillings, if they're present, especially if you're in that preconception planning, all right, before starting to try. And if you realize, oh shit, I should say Schweppes, I haven't addressed that, then maybe we need to address that now. Okay. So there's so much you can do. But let's look at some of the nutrients. So some of the, supplements that I might recommend for patients to protect oral health and your reproductive health. So I'm just going to give the basics, keep it basic. But, the first one, vitamin D3 and K2, they worked synergistically together to direct calcium into the bones and the teeth. So they're strengthening the gum tissue. So you want to make sure, that you're taking around, 5,000 IU of the D3 and the K2. Your CoQ10, all of this you're pretty much already taking, ladies, but your CoQ10, it's essential for your gum healing and reducing oxidative stress in the eggs and sperm. It can improve egg quality and implantation rates, but it's essential for the gums, all right, and reducing that oxidative stress. So CoQ10, magnesium, it supports strong enamel. It helps regulate calcium absorption. So it's also critical for reducing inflammation in the gums. If you look at zinc, we need that for antimicrobial, helps prevent gum infections. It's also important for, sperm motility, DNA integrity. Vitamin C, omega-3s, like this is all pretty self-explanatory, but vitamin C, omega-3s, your omega-3 fatty acids for chronic inflammation. Like that's all, been highlighted as a significant risk factor for increased periodontal disease. So, you could look at that. And then clearly I started with the probiotics because that's the most important. It's immunomodulating. It protects against infections. It works on your gut health. All right. It helps nutrient absorption. All right. It's probably my number one when I'm really working with, oral microbiome. So let's just conclude here. All right. I want you to think about your mouth, and it's a window. It really is a window into your health and your fertility journey. It's not just about your breath and a bright smile, even though that's a nice outcome, isn't it? But if we just think about why we need to look at our oral health, all right, we want to reduce any inflammation. We want to address any oral health imbalances. We want to, because we don't want to lower any systemic inflammation that's going to be a byproduct of that. So we want a more receptive environment. If there's systemic inflammation, then you're not going to be receptive to implantation and, supporting early pregnancy. We want a balanced oral microbiome to support your progesterone, your estrogen, your insulin regulation. So these are the key hormones for ovulation and conception. We want a healthy mouth before conception because we want to reduce the risk of miscarriage, the risk of preterm birth, and the risk of pregnancy complications. And then, it's not just about us, ladies, it's about the male fertility as well. They're just as affected. So healthy gums lead to stronger, more fertile, motile sperm. So your fertility, it really, it's whole body, but it starts in the mouth. Okay, it starts in the mouth. And you can take those small, impactful changes to your oral hygiene, your diet, and your dental care. You're not just improving your smile, but you're taking a powerful step towards a healthy conception and pregnancy. And I guess the biggest takeaway is I just want you to prioritize this because it could be something that you've overlooked. All right, let's make this a key part of your fertility plan. And I can tell you this, your future baby will thank you. Namaste. So let's open up the Q&A. Tara, let's talk about these tongue scraping. Perhaps you can give us some insight into the on the tongue.
Well, it's best to use a metal scraper rather than plastic. And they're some really nice ones, either Amazon or health food store. And it's best to scrape before rinsing or brushing. And then you could actually examine the color and see if it is like a white or a brown or, kind of like what it looks like. And it will give you a little bit of an indicator of like what's going on. Is there a lot? Is there a little? Is it in the back? And then, of course, all the things that Dr. Tassani just shared, the oil pulling and all that will help clean all that out. But yeah, you'll scrape before brushing. And then I've also read that it starts to stimulate the digestion as well. It kind of gets everything going because it actually is stimulating all the organs as you're doing the scraping.
Yes,
So.
great. Beautiful. Now, Jessica's asked, she has a copper one. It should be good, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, pretty much just anything but the plastic ones. So yeah, the copper, the metal. Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah, thanks,
Yeah.
Tara. That's key information. Any other questions? Nina, do you have a question for me? So nice to see you.
Hi, no, I don't. I already went to a holistic dentist because I listened to Roseanne Austin Fearlessly Fertile podcast, and she had a dentist like months ago. So I have been seeing one. And they recommended when I eat leafy greens, either to wash it before, which my husband complains because it gets soggy. So they said I do a water pick, and they told me two thingies. What is it? Herbal thingies to put in the water.
Would it be apple cider vinegar? Maybe some zeolite? No.
No, it was like I have to go downstairs. Oregano and something else. Two essential oils to put in.
It might have been peppermint and tea tree.
Could be. I know oregano, and I don't remember what the other one is. but
oregano oil.
It was based on whatever bacteria was in my mouth.
Yeah, the essential oils are powerful. So powerful.
Yeah.
Jessica, any key takeaways for you, Jess? Do you want to have a share?
I don't think I have any right now. I mean, I know that the dentist that I see is not one of the dentists that you recommend, but I know in the past they have removed some of the metal fillings from my mouth. So now I have basically I don't know what kind of filling it is, but it's the one that matches your tooth.
Yeah, the resin.
Yeah, so I think I may have like one or two fillings that are metal, but that's it.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's even if I have one or two. I think they might be all taken out. So,
any other questions? Any key takeaways that anyone wants to share from the talk? No questions. All right. I think we've covered a lot today. I think it's a really important topic and one that just gets overlooked, because we just get so big on looking at systemic issues. But I think, if we look at 80% of disease symptoms are related to the mouth. So it makes sense to start there, doesn't it? So, ladies, thank you for joining me. It's always a pleasure for you to jump on and share your knowledge and your wisdom and share your questions. Remember that the questions that you ask are probably the questions that people are at home listening to and wanting to ask but afraid to ask. So always feel free to ask any question because we all learn from the questions. So thank you. Sweet good night. I'll see you next week.
thank you, doctor, for your time.
Simone. Hi, Tara.